Hello and welcome to Rift Review. First off, what is Rift? Rift is an MMORPG or a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, which if you don't know what that means, there are a lot of other players online playing and interacting with the same world you are, and that's a massive part of the game. Rift's storyline is interesting, but it doesn't really take up a large portion of the game, and after the starting zone it mostly dissipates, with most quests being go here, kill or collect this. However, it also has the occasional storyline quest in case that's your thing. Quests. As I said, Rift's quests don't tend to differ much from the standard MMO, with most of them being simple go here, kill this type quests, and they get very repetitive, meaning that unless you are a die-hard quester, you will get bored of doing quests. Dungeons. The dungeons in Rift require 4 roles, a tank, a healer, 2 DPS, and a support. Because of the extra role, queue times are longer than a game like WoW's might be, particularly in the levels before 50. So if you want to spam dungeons all the way to max level, then you best get a bunch of friends and stick together, unless you have the patience of a saint. Raids. Raids in Rift are completely epic, with some of the most creative mechanics I have seen, like the boss turning your whole party into critters and making you run a gauntlet through a bunch of wolves. Very interesting and fun. Dungeons and raids in Rift, I would have to say, have harder mechanics than a game like World of Warcraft. This might make it particularly daunting with a player new to MMOs or to games completely. Even so, the Rift community is on the whole very nice and helpful, and will help you learn what it is you need to do, though you will encounter the occasional bug, because that's how life is. Rifts. The namesake of the game take an integral part in the game. Rifts will appear just about anywhere, and you will start encountering them right off the bat. A lot of rifts require the help of other players in order to complete, and this is where I have to say, Rift really shines, in that it has accommodated for this by implementing a very clean grouping mechanic, so that people can group up and get their loot without any hassle. Going beyond normal rifts, you will also encounter raid rifts. Good grief, what is a raid rift, you might wonder. It is a much harder rift requiring more players to complete, but it also awards loot in chests. Usually raid rifts help players gear up for raids. Invasions. Nothing quite takes your breath away and makes your trigger finger itch than invasions. When a whole slew of rifts open up across the zone, pouring out creatures that attack everything and anything in their path, creating footholds and just tearing everything apart. In order to deal with this, it is quite possible that hundreds of players can come along and deal with that invasion. After protecting wardstones and completing certain objectives during the invasion, a big bad boss will spawn. These things have huge amounts of health and award some really useful currency when you take them down. Footholds are little idols that usually have creatures protecting them. Onslaughts. When I got to level 50, my friends said, "Hey man, let's go to Ember Isle and do some onslaughts." Yeah, sure, whatever, I thought, and then I got there. Onslaughts are now one of my favorite things in the entire game. Why? Because they are what their namesake would suggest. You must survive and hold out against an onslaught of planar invaders, and in between fighting for dear life, you can upgrade defenses, wells that heal you and other players, and turrets that blast the enemies for added damage. The combination of building up fortifications and just slaughtering armies of enemies makes for one hell of a good time. Daily quests. I am not a fan of quests, as I find them very grindy, and daily quests are no different. I am only willing to do the same thing over and over so many times, but if you want to play Rift, then you better get used to these things, because you need to do them in order to earn a much needed reputation, which lets you unlock vendors to get things like gear or enchantments for gear and such things. Leveling up. Rift has a rather short leveling time, which is around about 2 days playtime, and I hope it stays this way. Out of the MMOs I have played, leveling usually takes for bloody ever. But in Rift you can not only level up reasonably fast, but you also have a large amount of options in terms of how you want to level. Do you want to quest, or dungeon, or complete rifts, or grind, or do instant adventures, or PvP? It's completely up to you. One of the things I must say about leveling is that I tend to quest because it usually is just the fastest way to level, and it can get very boring. But rifts and invasions help to break that boredom because they are extremely fun to do. While leveling, you will also get currencies such as Planarite, which can be used to purchase gear. Rift has many currencies, and whether you want to save them all up for max level gear, or buy gear while you level, because you can have a bunch of epics at level 20, it is again up to you. And I love that aspect of the game, because hey, everyone loves their gear. In Rift, you can also reach max level, and then continue to level through something called planar attunement. Now some of you might be thinking, oh good grief, more grinding! Stuff this. Planar attunement is a fun side benefit for doing the things you are going to do anyway. You don't grind EXP after 50, but you do earn it while you do everything else. Instant adventures. Questing is boring, right? What about group questing with 50 other people? Less boring? Damn straight! Not only are instant adventures a speedy way to level, but they put the MMO in MMO. What must those poor creatures think when they see a vicious mob of players heading toward them with bloodlust in their eyes? I'm pretty sure it must be something like, "And it's time for my lunch break. Have fun, fellow evildoers." Mentoring. Mentoring grants players the ability to scale down their level, so that means that level 50s can go down in levels temporarily and play alongside their friend. I was actually expecting this to be an epic fail with a ton of balance issues, but Rift pulled it off pretty darn well. PvP. I am not much of a PvPer, but it's still fun to do the occasional warfront. One of the things you must realize in Rift is that in order to PvP, you really need PvP gear. It's not like the PvP gear is better, but you can still do it in PvE gear. I mean what I said. If you're attacking a guy in PvP gear and you don't have any, it will take forever to kill them, and they can kill you in a matter of seconds. So it will take some grinding before you can really stand a chance, but hey, then you get to beat up all those without any gear, so it's still a win, if that's your thing. Classes and talents. In Rift you have 4 classes. Aww, but I like having a zillion specs, you might think. Well, just hold your horses, because each class has 8 talent trees, and you can have 3 active in each spec for you to put points in. In other words, you can go from being a warlock to a priest with the click of a button. This is another thing I love about Rift, and that is the flexibility the talent system gives. Every class can perform more than 2 roles, with clerics being able to swap between all 4. So, no longer can you just DPS with a mage. You can DPS, heal, be support, and have a ton of fun doing it. I also love this because it cuts down on my altaholic ways. Patches. Rift puts out a ton of patches, from small itty-bitty little bug fixes to massive content patches, and they do this all the time. They are constantly refining their already very polished game, and they pump out content patches so often it's actually kind of scary. Bugs. As I said, Rift has very few bugs, and the most common one I have seen is that sometimes Rift creatures will spawn inside rocks or trees, so you can't kill them and complete the Rift, but even that doesn't happen very often. Lag. Despite having tons of stuff going on all the time, Rift isn't very laggy. Chances are, if you're lagging, your internet connection has been taking lessons from mine. Graphics. Rift is a good-looking game, with great-looking buildings to stunning landscapes. The only thing I dislike when it comes to how it looks is that they don't have enough cool-looking gear, but that's about it. Truth is, if the graphics got much better, my computer would die and I wouldn't be able to play anymore. This is probably another issue you might have if you're running on an old PC. Make sure to check Rift's required system specs. Is it a clone of other MMOs such as WoW? No, it's not. It has many differences and many elements from many different MMO games, but it also isn't ultra creative. Rift doesn't seem to be very abnormal or experimental. It seems to prefer sticking to what it knows works and doing it really well. And that works. Difficulty. Out of the MMO games out there, I would have to call it one of the harder ones, simply because of the mechanics and things like raids. It also requires gear sets for different encounters due to an emphasis on things like resistance. Other MMOs are simplifying the game, and Rift is definitely not. It has a huge amount of complexity, but as I said, they have a really good community backing them up, so they can do this and it works just fine. Lack of resources. This is one of the things that adds to the difficulty of the game, and that is finding information can be difficult for an MMO. Rift is really quite young, and the community simply hasn't got the resources together for the game yet, and they're trying, don't get me wrong, but it's a gradual process that will take place over time as the game grows. Add-ons. Being one of the major resources, I figure it deserved its own little section in this review. It's not that add-ons in Rift aren't made well, or that they aren't helpful, it's that they aren't really there yet. There are a few, but you could probably count them on one hand. The same thing will happen with add-ons as with the rest of the resources out there. It will grow with the game. Currencies. Rift has a ton of currencies, for all sorts of different things. It loves its currencies, and I love having a ton of stuff in my currency page, so I don't mind. With this, I feel it also needs to be said that it feels harder to gear up in Rift than a game like WoW might be. I know you might hate me for continuing to bring up WoW, but because so many people know it or know of it, it's just a very good reference to use. Artifacts, puzzles, and collectibles. While adventuring through the massive landscape of this game, you will encounter various things to collect, such as books. However, you will also encounter artifacts, which, when you collect full sets of, you can hand in for vanity currency, which you can use to get things like costumes and pets. But don't worry, these things won't take up much inventory space unless you already have them. As the first one you get, you click it, you collect it, and you can open your character menu to view it as it is removed from your backpack and stored in its own little menu, in case you feel like reading or looking through your artifacts. Beyond this, zones also contain puzzles for you to complete, which will give you rewards for doing so as well. With all this to do in Rift, you will find that you don't usually get players moping around the city saying, "I'm bored, there's nothing to do." And if anyone does, I feel sorry for them, as they will be bombarded by an onslaught of suggestions. This again is something I really like about Rift, and that is when I'm online, I spend a fraction of my time in the city, because I only ever go there to craft things or post auctions, and the rest of the time I am busy out there. Rift also has a lot of consumables that you can use as you go along, which is fun and great, but it also means you have more stuff you will need for raids, which means more grinding or buying from the auction house. The auction house in Rift is nothing special and is very similar to other MMOs. The verdict. While this game might not bring something incredibly new to the franchise, it does bring something incredibly good. And that's enough for me. I like this game, and I recommend it to anyone else who likes MMOs, or RPGs, or MMORPGs. If you still aren't sure about this game, go try out their trial, so you can get a bit of a feel for it. I have put a link in the description for you. That's it for this Rift review, and I feel like I have barely even scratched the surface of this game. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to like and comment. You can also subscribe by clicking the annotation on the video or the button above the video. If you want, you can also follow me on Twitter, the link is in the description. So tell me, viewers, what's got you thinking about Rift? Let me know in the comments or on Twitter.